Do y'all think that the better team won, or was this just a bad game?
They got a cloud hanging over their head.
You execute when you're supposed to execute, and we didn't do that. They were the better team in that game.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Pigskins and Pageantry. We will talk about those games from last week, including a stunner in Columbia, South Carolina. We are also honored to be joined by a member of the Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast. Matt has promised to be on his best behavior, but we'll see. But let's check in with our other host. Matt, how are you?
I'm not gonna lie to you. The time changes got me a little sideways today. Every time I look around, I'm like, it should be. It's just I'm a little off kilter today.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking outside already and it's dark. It's a bit weird. So
But aside from that, I mean, it was a pretty good day for me yesterday, and I didn't work Friday, so that was
there you
fun
go.
time.
Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a game that I was invested in this weekend, so it was nice to not
Not gonna lie.
experience that much anxiety on a Saturday.
It's always nice to just kind of take a week off and just enjoy the games for sure.
hmm
Speaking of which, let's talk about them.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
All right, so let's talk about Vanderbilt at Auburn here. Vandy winning this one 17-7. Matt gets the point here. I would just like to start off talking about this game by saying that Diego Pavia is that dude. All right, he did that thing again where he's on the run, sees the corners beat, and somehow manages to throw a pass across his body with touch and still have it land before the safety makes it over the top. I don't get it. That just seems physically impossible, but he continues to do it on the regular. Still, though, not a whole lot of overall offense in this one, but Vandy able to find enough at the end of this one to get it done. Auburn's offense continues to look confused and like they have no identity. I can't get a handle on what's going on down there. Hugh Freeze, as he said, is sick of Diego Pavia. And if you don't know why, so he beat him when Hugh Freeze coached at Liberty with New Mexico State, then beat him at Auburn last year with New Mexico State, and is now beating him at Auburn with Vanderbilt. So just a bizarre story between those two. Matt, let's go to you first on this one. What were your thoughts on this game?
Well, I mean, like we said, this is an Auburn team that has had some struggles. I mean, just kind of looking over the stats for this particular game, they beat Vanderbilt offensively on the side of the ball. They had more yards total. They had more first downs. They were more successful on third down than Vanderbilt was. Like, this is a game they probably could have won, but they just couldn't punch it into the end zone. Diego Pavia again begins to show how good he's been. Not a stellar day in the air, 9 for 22 for 143 yards, but he still got two touchdowns. He still got the job done. And again, it's just one of those situations where if you're an Auburn fan, you have to be kind of like, what is happening? We can't even beat Vanderbilt at this point. Also, I would like to personally congratulate Vanderbilt University for being the 2024 Alabama State champions. Congratulations to you. Love that for you. But unfortunately, you'd better not win the Tennessee State Championship. This is not the year for that sort of shenanigans. So,
Yeah. By the way, talking about Hugh Freeze, I forget how many games along he is in his tenure at Auburn, but his record exactly the same as Brian Harsin prior to him at this
not
point
a
in
good
his
look.
tenure.
It's
Yeah.
an awful look.
Not great. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
Other than woof at that stat, because I mean, but doesn't it just like follow the Auburn narrative though? And I'm not saying that as a Bama fan. I'm just saying as somebody watching, we saw them do it with Gus Malzahn, right? Where he was successful. He was doing things sometimes, most of the time, was beating Bama. And
Right.
then they're like, no, get out of here. So they brought in Harsin. We weren't quite sure what that was, but he was okay sometimes. And then they were like, no. And then they brought in Hugh Freeze, and we are like, all right, that's a big, big name. Bring him back to the SEC. Let's see how it goes. And
Right.
here we go. And it's just following this this narrative that Auburn has kind of concocted of someone's doing okay, and instead of giving them time to do better, they're just like, no, or they have someone that's doing okay and like kind of better than okay, and they just want to throw them out because it's not stellar. And I think that's how we're getting this Auburn team that doesn't have an identity. And people are going to blame it on the transfer portal. People are going to blame it on NIL. They're going to blame it on a myriad of things. And it probably is a combination of those things. But I think what you're seeing is a team that some of these guys have had two different coaches, kind of three, because we had an interim coach at some point, and you're just not seeing an identity. And I think that's going to be something they struggle with until the athletic department, the boosters align on somebody that they want to stay and they want to really entrust in those building years. I don't know if Hugh Freeze is going to get that opportunity. We've seen that they're willing to pay really big buyouts. So I'm unsure with Auburn. There's just a big lack of identity there. Vanderbilt is going bowling. All
They
right.
are.
Yeah, they're going bowling for the first time
Do they
since
get
2014.
did they get T-shirts for that as well,
Uh,
or is that just a Missouri
I don't
thing?
know. I don't know. Oh, sorry. They're going bowling for the first time since 2018. Their
2018, yeah.
last win was 2014 in the Compass Bowl against Houston. They do have a pretty tough end of season schedule. They're about to go up against South Carolina, which we'll talk about, can be sneakily tough. And then they have to finish out with LSU and then, of course, Tennessee. So this is their chance to have their first season above 500 since 2013 when they finished 9-4 under James Franklin. That's
Yeah.
huge for them. And I think
Yeah.
we're starting to see what we kind of talked about last week on the show. We're seeing that with this new era in football, anyone can do anything at any given time. And the playing field is getting a little bit more evened out here. So that's really exciting. You already touched on how Diego Pavia owns Hugh Freeze. I'm waiting for those t-shirts to come out. But their defense also did a pretty good job. They put a lot of pressure on Payton Thorne. And again, this is an Auburn offense that isn't stellar, but they got to Payton Thorne 3 times, totaled for 7 tackles for a loss. So they were lights out on Saturday.
Yeah. And that Vandy, wild story just continues to roll along this year. Speaking of wild stories, let's go to Florida versus Georgia. Georgia winning this one 34-20. That score is not indicative of how close this one was. I got the point here. And that let's see, what did I put? Holy cow, did I get the score exactly right?
Did you really?
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. I think that might be a typo where I just copied and pasted. I got the point, but I'm gonna double check that because I'm I feel like
Try not to look so thrilled with
I
yourself there,
would be
Wes.
I would be more excited about that if I had known that because anyways, I don't think that's right. Anyways, so as far as the game itself, Carson Beck. Okay, all right. So he now has 11 interceptions in his last 5 games. This is a game that Georgia was in command of early on, not in terms of the scoreboard, but just methodically marching down the field, controlling the line of scrimmage, doing quick hit passes, catching Florida off guard. But then all of a sudden, Carson Beck only could seem to throw it to the other team. I don't know what's going on there. If he's just pressing things, forcing. It looked like forcing throws is the primary thing, especially when he's pressured. He's not just throwing it away. He's seeing a very tight window and just trying to force the ball where it's just not going to work. Now, to his credit, he played through it and he got better. But at some point, you got to take care of the football, and this kind of stuff is just not going to work against really good teams. He almost got away with it in Bama. Kind of got away with it, in a few other games this year. But at some point, it's just going to catch up with you full on. So if DJ Lagway doesn't go down with a hamstring in this one, who knows what might have happened? They looked pretty threatening with him at the helm on offense. Instead, they ended up having to put this game in the hands of Aiden Warner, a walk-on who transferred from Yale, which credit to the guy. I mean, did decent considering. Speaking of injuries, I know a lot of people were blaming the field turf for the amount of injuries in this game. Just a ton of people going down on both sides in this one. So Georgia up 13-6, or down 13-6 rather at half, and then outscored Florida 28-7 in the second half. Again, I'm not jumping up and down about this. I realize this was against the guy who's just chilling on the bench, or as Billy Napier said, eating ice cream a few weeks ago. Not even
That
thinking.
press conference was just
It was
I had flashbacks of Butch Jones. It
it
was
was
not
something.
good.
It was something.
It's not
But
good.
yeah, sitting on the bench, not even thinking he might be in a meaningful game. So while a win is nice, I'm keeping that in perspective as well. I haven't even mentioned Georgia's atrocious secondary play, which I get. We had a couple of guys out serving targeting suspensions in the first half, so I'm not overlooking that either. But still, it's pretty bad. Jackson Dart, if we have that same performance, might throw for 700 yards against us next week. Jesse, what were your thoughts on this game?
I mean, I started watching it and I was like, oh my God, maybe
Right?
this really is just going to be complete chaos this season. That would have been ultimate chaos. Um, I I had hope for Florida. I really had hope for them. And as soon as Lagway went down, it was like, oh. Um, I think Carson Beck is, I don't have an answer for it. I really don't know why this is happening. He seems so uncertain in the first half of a ball game. It's like before he gets to the field, he's taking like a muscle relaxer or something, and then it wears off at halftime, and then he
And
just like,
spending too much time in his Lamborghini, I think.
yeah, I don't know
Get me
what's
started
happening.
on that.
And I don't know how the coaching staff is attempting to rectify it, or if they are, because they're winning, but so that's a concern for me. And I think it's something that the quarterback's coach, obviously Kirby Smart, they need to figure out what's going on. There needs to be something, there needs to be a meeting. We need to break down some film and handle this, because yes, you touched on it. You're not going to get away with this with every team. Very lucky that Lagway went down, because I don't know if they would have gotten away with it. I think I'm concerned for Florida's future in terms of their bowl eligibility. We're getting in that time of the season where that becomes a real thing. And I know bowl games can be silly to people and a lot of people sit out, but it does get money for the university and for the conference. So they can be advantageous. They're also a chance for those that are not going to go into the draft to play, a chance for other guys to get some experience, especially getting experience sometimes outside of the conference. But they have a tough schedule coming up. I mean, they have to play Texas at Texas. They have to play LSU at home. They play Ole Miss at home. So right now, their ability to reach bowl eligibility is kind of a concern. It's going to be a challenge, especially if Lagway doesn't come back into the equation. I don't know that Florida's going to make it to a bowl game. Now, stranger things have happened, so we'll see. Um, Again, I touched on it already, but I think Georgia has to do something with Carson Beck. I'm not saying throw Carson Beck out. I'm not saying start somebody else. I'm saying there needs to be some meetings this week and continually to figure out what that underlying problem is, because it's not like this is something that we're used to seeing from him. This is new this season. He threw 11 picks in 14 games last season, and now he's thrown 11 so far this season. It's not great. It's a little bit of regression. So this game
Jesse,
was
you just stole my stat that I was going to drop. Thank you for that.
um this game was everything that this game typically is. Back and forth kind of craziness. But it's something that the quarterbacks, I think, are the big headline here from this game. Obviously, Florida losing theirs, and Georgia having some concerns with theirs.
I did check, and that was a typo. I had the same. I had the exact differential, but the score was not exactly the same.
Mm.
I saw where somebody said that Carson Beck needs to sell the Lambo and buy a '96 Toyota Corolla. Uh, Matt, what were your
Right
thoughts?
on.
Oh boy. Yeah, I was expecting. I mean, I was expecting a game, but I didn't expect Florida to come out and have a lead going into half. I was a bit blown away by that. I remember thinking Man, I sure hope that Georgia finds a way to win this thing because I don't need them losing a game to Florida because we've got to play them in 2 weeks, and I need them to, in order for the playoff picture to work out. We need to either find a way to beat Tennessee or beat Georgia or lose real close to Georgia as far as playoff stuff goes. But I digress. I don't understand what's going on with Georgia. It can't be stated, and Jesse's touched on it, so I'm not going to beat the horse too long. But it can't be stated how important quarterback play is in the NCC. If you look at all the teams in the NCC, they're in that top third that are winning ball games. The quarterback play is anywhere from good to great. The thing is that if you start messing around with that slider and you start going to meh to bad, then you start running into some pretty hardcore problems. You don't have to go very far to look at that. And so as a result of that, I feel like UGA kind of has. And if I'm the quarterbacks coach, I'm having a sit down with Beck. I'm trying to figure out why you've thrown as many interceptions this season as you have in your entire career at UGA. It makes no sense. Again, a lot in West we talked about. It looked like a lot of it is him trying to do too much or trying to force things where they don't need to go, or they're misreads and not reading properly. And you really shouldn't have that happening. Out of somebody that has as much experience as he does. So, long story short, Georgia's got to make some inroads on that quarterback situation. Another thing that I think that a lot of people aren't talking about, especially with Georgia, is the run game. I feel like the run game has been not phenomenal. I don't have the stats pulled up right in front of me, but they have not been lights out as far as running goes in this particular game. I mean, they had 148 yards, but they're averaging 4.6 yards a carry. Now, granted, I'm coming from a Tennessee perspective. I'm used to putting up some points, putting up some yards on the running in the run game, but I just don't feel like there's a guy that's stepped out of the shadow and has been like, you're RB1. It feels like very much like in the NFL, they call it a running back by committee, which is usually pretty, so I don't know. And I'm saying all that with Nate Frazier going off for 82 yards on 19 carries, but I don't know. I
Well,
just
and
need
ATN went out too.
Yeah, he ended up being the
that's
guy because
true.
ETN had a rib injury, and they just said he couldn't go anymore in the
Not
second
that
half.
ATN has
That's
put up
fair.
insane numbers
Yeah,
I mean,
this far either,
nothing
although I'm sure he
overtly
really
crazy.
wanted to against his former team,
I'm sure.
but he just couldn't get out there.
And it's
So,
going to be really interesting to see how Florida's going to bounce back after this. Again, they've got a really tough road to hoe as far as the rest of the season goes. So,
hmm
lot. And again, I feel like Napier was like coaching himself back into a job in that first half, and then things kind of just went off the track.
I think he's bought himself some more time, even with this. Just I
I
don't
think
know.
you're probably right.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about quarterback play earlier, and that primes us perfectly for the next one we're going to talk about, and that is Texas A&M at South Carolina. South Carolina winning this one 44-20. I was the only one to pick South Carolina here. Just
Obviously.
saying. uh,
Again, I made my comment in the write up for this, and it was not pleasant, and it was
yeah,
definitely not G rated. So,
not safe for work.
but
Yeah.
you were the last to laugh, so to speak, though, Wes. So kudos
Well,
to you.
this game was tied 20 all at half, but South
Yeah.
Carolina just dominated that second half. One thing that I noticed here, and they even commented on later on in the day, was we have really, for the first time, seen Lenoris Sellers and Rocket Sanders at full health, and
Hmm.
they are a scary duo when they are healthy. With both of them going over 100 yards on the ground, and obviously Sellers, able to beat you with both his arm and his legs as at the quarterback position. So they said it on SEC football final, and I agree. But South Carolina took pretty much everything that A&M was doing, and they did it better. Your quarterback play,
Hmm.
mobile quarterback who can do that. Getting after the quarterback on defense, even the crowd influencing the game in this one. They just took it to the next level. I won't go to the extent that Chris Doring did on the SEC football final. He said that they took the field or the crowd feel at Kyle Field and they made it seem like a joke. I don't know if I would go that far,
Oh no, no.
but
Let's
they
calm
That
down
certainly
with
might
that
be a
talk.
step too far.
they certainly kicked it up a notch, but that's going a bit too far. But anyways, so they showed this was an interesting moment to me. They showed Frank Beamer smiling after the game, and I thought he knows. He knows how big of a deal this is. This is huge for the program. This is huge for his son in that program. And like just what a moment for a dad watching his son coach there. I can't imagine what that must be like. Huge win for South Carolina. What do you think, Matt? What are your thoughts?
Again, this is total domination from South Carolina. Just looking over the stats, 530 total yards. They're averaging 7.6 yards a play, 26 first downs. They just kind of dominated both sides of the ball. We knew that Texas A&M was going to have a question mark. Marcel Reed at quarterback. Excuse me, it's hard to talk. But I thought he did a decent job. It's just a question of A&M's defense couldn't get things going. They made Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers look like superstars, and they may very well be. It just makes me wonder what if we had them healthy and if they had been online earlier in the season. The only game they got blown out was against Ole Miss. They lost by 3 to LSU, and I think they lost by 2. Yeah, 2 points to Bama. So, you could potentially be looking at a one-loss Carolina team right now, along with the other one-loss teams that are in the SEC. It's a really weird year this year, guys. You buckle up. It's going to get a lot weirder before anything else happens. But kudos to Carolina for finding a way to get this thing done and getting a win over a top 10 team. I think Mike Elko is going to have to steady the ship. There was a lot of talk about, well, what's this going to do to A&M's looks going into the playoff, and now they may be one of the teams that's on the outside looking in after losing this game to Carolina. So
Maybe
a lot
so.
of questions still remain.
Jesse?
I, I would, even though, yes, they may be on the outside looking in. A lot of us will be, I think. But I think if I were to talk to an A&M fan, I would just say the hype got really crazy really fast, and it's easy to
Correct.
just buy into that. But remember, you did not have these expectations at the beginning of the season. You didn't think you'd even
No.
be playoff contention or chats, right? So, like, take that and understand that you have come leaps and bounds further in a very short amount of time than anyone thought you would. Even being in the top 10 at some point during this season, I didn't think was possible for them. So take that and understand that if you're able to do this within one season, think about what you can do when you continue to build on it. So don't lose faith in your coaching staff, in your team, and don't get down on whether or not you can make it to the college football playoff, because this is still such a great success for this A&M team this season. And again, yes, it's probably a blow to their hopes of even being in an SEC championship potentially, just because we have other teams that, have a loss. You're looking at LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas. They're all vying for spots too. They're at Auburn next week, so I think they should be able to bounce back pretty comfortably at that point. And then they're going to end out the season by hosting Texas. So that could go any way. If they're able to take this loss and use it as fuel, they may be able to make it to Atlanta. I don't know. They have not made it to Atlanta in the 13 years that they've been in the SEC, so we'll see. But again, they've still had such a successful season that I wouldn't get down on that if I'm an A&M fan. As far as Carolina goes, whoa. First of all, off of Matt's points, I'm really glad Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders were not at full capacity playing against Alabama. No
Got
thanks.
lost by 3 touchdowns if they had been.
We would have been so embarrassed at home. It would have been sad. It was already bad. It would have been worse. But they are without a doubt, and maybe we'll see this change a little bit, but they are such a volatile team in this conference.
Up,
It's
down.
it's feast and famine. It's so hard to keep up with. Perhaps with these two gentlemen healthy and playing at full scale, it'll be easier to predict. But at this point, I have no idea. If they continue to play like they did on Saturday, they could beat just about anybody in the league. And they're just one bowl or just one win away from a bowl game. They got to have it, and they still have Wofford on their schedule. I think I'm saying that right. Wofford.
Terriers.
Yeah. So I think they'll make a bowl game. But man, what a huge win. I think this is, again, we've seen it the past couple seasons. South Carolina has like one top 10 win or one team that they should not beat that they do. and it always makes Beamer look like he can really pull out a coaching job. So he's going to stay in Columbia. Fear not, friends.
That interview in the sea, in the middle of the sea of people, was just wild to watch.
Chaotic. Chaotic.
Is it
Yeah.
just me, by the way, while we're talking about sea of peoples on the field? Like, I feel like we've seen more field rushes in the last two
I
seasons.
saw it before it was
Like
even going to
we've
happen.
seen,
They were all piling down from the tops of the stadium. I was like, oh,
yeah,
there,
they were
it's
getting
about
ready.
to happen.
Yeah,
Y'all know how I feel about it.
I just
Yeah.
feel like we've seen a ton of them, especially this season, but including last season. I feel like they're happening every other week, which is great. I don't have an issue with it, but obviously Greg Sankey and the SEC does because I mean Carolina's going to get slapped with a fine, just like Tennessee did a couple weeks ago, just like um, Vanderbilt did like a month ago. It's the
Did
norm at
you
this point.
did you see those shrubs after they jumped the
I'm
rail?
sure they were ripped to absolute
Destroyed.
crap.
The poor landscaping people, like it just absolutely obliterated.
I seem to remember that Georgia did something similar when they beat Tennessee for the first time in forever.
I
I
was gonna
think it
say
was after the
storm
Hobnail boot, right?
field storms. Well, that was at Tennessee, wasn't it? No, that was a
Hobnail boot? No, that's
no,
a
that
home.
was a home. But I don't remember. Field storms are not very frequent in Athens, but yeah.
They
Plus
do not happen in Tuscaloosa. We do not allow it. It's not a
hopping
thing.
over the hedges is not exactly easy at Georgia either.
No, I
So,
will
Maybe
never
everybody needs
forget
to just
the meme of after kick six, um, in Jordan Hare when that one person, I think it was a girl, like jumped down, because they have the hedges too, and she just engulfed,
yes, yes,
yeah,
she
fully
disappeared
engulfed
into it.
in it. I don't know if they've ever found her.
Yeah,
it's probably
She's
still in
part
there.
of the shrubs now.
Maybe that's why Jordan Hare has that voodoo or had that
Yeah,
voodoo. I guess.
maybe.
They
had it.
sacrificed some poor college girl to the football gods, and her bones are at the bottom of the shrubbery.
Oh my, terrifying stuff.
Shrubbery skeletons, man.
Speaking of terrifying, maybe it was the Dark Knight uniforms too. Those were pretty sweet looking. Anyways, we gotta move on. Kentucky at Tennessee. Tennessee winning this one 28-18. Is that right? Yeah, got that right. I'm second guessing everything now after I did that. I got the point here. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you for the first word in this one. What were your thoughts on this one?
Um, I have never been so happy, elated, angry, depressed, frustrated, and just gleeful than I ever have in this particular football game. Again, with Tennessee this season, it's been a lot of up and down as well. Vols end up taking care of business. Thank God for that. Bit shaky in the first half, which is, as I was telling your buddy Grant West, we were texting through the game.
Mhm.
It is a Tennessee tradition for us to suck in the first half now, apparently. We can't get anything
Not
going in
just
the first
Tennessee.
half. Oh well, it's endemic to everybody this season, apparently. But we did get a touchdown before the half, which was an improvement over how it's been the last 3 weeks. But here's the thing: I thought Nico played a pretty dadgum good game. Last week when we were talking about the lead up to this game, I said that I think this is the game where Tennessee's offense finally starts clicking, and I think that on the quarterback end of things, Nico definitely did that. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but he played a pretty dadgum good game. If you give me 2 seconds, I'll pull him up. Nico went 28 for 38 for almost 300 yards and a touchdown, and it really should have been about 34, 33 for 38 with about 4 touchdowns because there were three really key, easy touchdown drops by a couple of our wide receivers. They just couldn't help him out in that regard. But I thought he played a really smart game. He's still showing he's a freshman. There's still some growing up that needs to happen. But overall, I feel like Nico did a pretty good job of kind of keeping things open and being safe with the ball. The big name out of this, obviously, is Dylan Sampson, 141 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns in this one. He's had over 100 yards in every game this season, with the exception of the Oklahoma game, where he was 8 yards short of that century mark. It's insane to me that Dylan Sampson's not in the Heisman talk right now. I feel like he's scoring touchdowns. He tied a Tennessee record for most touchdowns in a season, which has been a record at Tennessee since Gene McKeever in like 1928. So I mean, it's been a long time that particular record's been there. Again, I don't know why we're not discussing him in the Heisman race. Again, I don't expect him to win it, but again, it's a useless piece of hardware, and I think I've made my feelings on how useless and vapid and just inconsequential the Heisman is. Especially when you have certain journalists that are saying I hate Tennessee on Twitter when they're Heisman voters. So that happened too. But anyway, I digress. I thought Kentucky played really tough. Unfortunately for them, they came up a little bit short. Um, I was really worried for a second there that Kentucky was going to find a way to put this thing away, but then Tennessee was able to kind of come back and stay out in front. Thank goodness. Interesting little stat here, and I'd be curious to hear what you two think about this. Tennessee is only one of five SEC teams to hold each opponent in its season under 20 points through the first 8 games of the season. The last 4 teams that did that were the '03 LSU squad, the 2011 Alabama squad, the 2012 Alabama squad, and the 2021 Georgia squad. And all 4 of those teams have something in common, is that they were the ones lifting the hardware at the end of the season with a national championship. I find that stat quite interesting, and I want to be very clear about this, especially if you're watching this and you're on Vol Twitter. I'm in no way, shape, or form saying Tennessee's winning a national championship. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's some pretty lofty company to be hanging out with. So I would love to know what y'all think about that. That might be a cherry pick stat, but that's interesting. It's interesting.
I heard that stat this morning. Actually, Grant texted it to me. But
That's who I got it from too.
gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Tennessee, in order to do that, I think has got to match that same vibe on the offensive side of the ball. And while they have shown flashes of that this year, certainly they're going to have to be more consistent with that. And I don't mean just as a Georgia fan saying, they need to do better than Georgia. I just mean in general against other quality teams up top. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's going to have to play complete 4 quarters. Because as we know, once we get to the playoffs and with this expanded playoff, we're going to be playing teams that do put together 4 complete quarters. And in order to hold that trophy at the end, it's a much harder road now that we have 12 teams than it was before when we were in the BCS era or in the 14 playoff. So if they're going to do that, first quarter and second quarter, clean it up.
I agree.
Jesse, did you have any other thoughts on this particular one?
I mean, yeah, a little bit. Mine are more geared towards Kentucky just because they they were trying. They really were putting together some stuff. They were being a little bit gritty, but they still could not put together a game. I mean, they're on a losing streak, which is not a streak you want to be on. And I don't know what is happening in Lexington. It was like their offense was better, but it wasn't good enough. And that's going to be the issue here is their defense is trying. Their defense put up a decent showing against a Tennessee team that can really shut people out. And their offense just is not able to get enough production to keep them in the game. And that's an issue. Vandergriff fumbled the ball away on a strip sack, and he's had his own issues. I think pass protection is spotty from their offensive line. I just think they have too many self-inflicted issues that are going to continue to plague them until they plug those holes. And I think depending on the way the rest of the season goes, we could be looking at a very, very sad Kentucky team. They're now 4-game losing streak, and they're, on their second bye week now. They have 3 games to play. I don't know. I don't know. They should win some of them, but probably not going to win against Texas. Honestly, I don't think that they're going to win against Louisville.
Yeah.
So
They might find a way to beat Louisville.
I
They
don't
got a
know.
pretty good when they get things lined up defensively. Kentucky can stop some people. It's just a question of
That's the thing. They can
Yeah.
stop, but their offense isn't
yeah, that's true.
producing.
Their really good games have been ugly ones, like low scoring, like
Yes.
where their defense has kept them in it.
I mean, it's like if their kicker misses one field goal, they lose.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
comes down to that.
And I just looked up some of the team stats, and they're 37.5% on third down. It's pretty rough.
Yeah,
It's
not
pretty
great. Not great.
rough.
Mm.
All right, let's get through the last, just real quick, go through the blowouts. Ole Miss at Arkansas. I hate to say that this one was a blowout. I was hoping Arky was going to have a chance, but Ole Miss winning this one 30,
Arkansas.
63 to 31. Maine beats, or Oklahoma beats Maine, 59 to 14. I got the point here. And then Mississippi State beats Massachusetts 45 to 20, as we might expect. And Matt gets the point there. Do y'all have anything to say about those before we move on?
Yeah.
I just hate that Ole Miss Arkansas was a little bit closer. The
Yeah,
Ole Miss's offense, when Ole Miss's offense gets clicking, it's really hard for anybody to keep track of it. So,
yeah.
Mhm.
And Arkansas's corners just getting beaten regularly in that game. It was just abysmal. So I hate that for Porter and the Arkansas folks up there. But yeah, it was that was a rough one for sure. Um, all right, so the pick'em points. I've got 34. Jesse has 31. Matt has 19. Matt's like, get that out of here.
I didn't get a
Um,
single one this week.
yeah, yeah.
and you're still
Um,
only down by 3.
Yeah.
helmet stickers. Matt, who are your helmet sticker recipients for the week?
All right, so I got 2 of them. First off, I think Jackson Dart's definitely deserving of a helmet sticker this week. 25 for 31 for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns in the air is a pretty astounding number. Just that when I was going through the stat line, looking at some of these games, that was one that kind of popped out at me as far as impressive goes. And Jackson Dart again shows that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The other helmet sticker actually can't go on a helmet because there is no helmet for this, but the Neyland Stadium lighting / effects crew, I don't know who they are or who's running that particular thing, but man, they need all the money because I don't know if you saw some of the. And yes, I'm being a homer. I don't give a crap. I'm going to be a homer. I don't know if you've seen some of the video that's come out of this game last weekend. The band had little orange lights on top of their hats when the lights went out when they were making the power tee. So you had this giant orange tee going down the field in the dark.
It's impressive.
And then just the lighting and it's just the way Tennessee has come a long way to kind of catch up, I feel, with a lot of other schools because I know UGA installed their lights, Bama installed their lights, and Tennessee was kind of
Not that we get to use them. We don't get night games at home.
yeah.
So
We've had an exorbitant amount of night games for some reason, but I just feel like it does such a great job of kind of showcasing what a Tennessee night game looks like, and that builds into the environment because I mean Tennessee historically has always been a tough place to play. I feel like that takes it up an even further level, and I don't care what anyone says. They're not piping in any crowd noise. That crowd is au naturel, as the French would say. So kudos to them.
yeah. And also like they were on the button. So when Nico threw that one pass, that touchdown in the back of the end zone to the guy, he had the ball in his hand for about half a second before the stadium lights started going
Oh yeah,
crazy. I was like, what if he had dropped the ball or something? I was like, can you imagine?
you
Like
never
he
know.
fumbles
You
it out and
never know.
then the stadium lights are just going wild while it's happening. I was like, wow. All right, Jesse, what are your helmet stickers?
I got to give my first one to Rocket Sanders. I think we've been waiting for him to click fully in this South Carolina offense. We obviously knew that he was able to do really impactful things when he was at Arkansas, but seeing him fully ingrained and getting the touches that we expected at Carolina is a big deal. I mean, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's the first performance that we've seen this season like that. So my first one has to go to Rocket Sanders. My second one is not one helmet, it's a lot of helmets. But despite having lost this week, I think there were some moral victory points for the University of Florida team. They've dealt with a lot. They had no culture coming in here. They had a coach that they knew was probably on his way out, and it could have been very easy for them to play to expectation of everybody around them instead of actually going for it and playing up to their competition. And I feel like they played up to their competition. Unfortunately, with a quarterback going down, that that changed a lot of those elements in the game. But I think there's a lot of progress to look at from this Florida team in this game. And I'm going to give them my helmet sticker for playing the football that they should play and not playing down to the expectations that everybody else has of them.
That's good. I like that. My helmet stickers. First one goes to Jordan Watkins, wide receiver for Ole Miss, the Trey Harris-less Ole Miss team. 8 catches, 254 yards, 5 touchdowns. Just a heck of a day for the guy. Great game. So got to give him a sticker. And then Lenore Sellers, as I mentioned, he threw for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, rushed for 106 yards and a touchdown as well. First time a South Carolina quarterback's gone over 100 yards, and I can't remember the date, but it's a very long time. I think it's early 2000s, I think. So anyways, great game for him as well. And as we said, he's healthy, and who knows? Sky's the limit and for him, and we'll kind of see how things go. So let's go ahead and do a quick opinion segment.
Sir, if I may venture an opinion.
I'm not really interested in your opinion, 3PO.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right, so obviously we've got to do a little bit of celebrating here because this week is the first week that the CFP rankings will be revealed. So that will happen on Tuesday night. So in honor of that and to celebrate a little bit, we're going to...
Is there something else going on Tuesday?
Oh yeah, it's going to. There's something that's going to affect the entire nation on Tuesday, and that is the unveiling of the CFP rankings.
Oh, okay.
So there we go. There we go. So let's celebrate a little bit by giving our top five. Each of us will give our top five. Let's see, Matt. I think you put yours first. You go first. What do you got?
Yeah, and I went strictly just kind of off what I saw with the AP poll, plus going by what we can assume with the top four conference champions. So I went Oregon at 1. I think Oregon's probably going to be the one that wins the Big Ten this year. They've pretty much beat everybody they've gone against, and they've looked really good when they have played people. So I kind of like their chances. I went UGA at 2 because I still think at this point UGA is probably still number 2 as far as that goes. If Georgia loses to Tennessee in 2 weeks, or if they lose to Ole Miss this weekend, we may have to go back and reevaluate that. But as of right now, I like UGA at 2. I moved Miami up to 3, only because I feel like Miami is playing some pretty good football. They've looked really good. Now, they've had a couple struggles here and there, but again, winning the ACC is a little bit of more of a step up than winning in the Big 12, which is why I've got BYU at 4. BYU's on track to win the Big 12. The Big 12's not really that great, but I have them at 4. And then I have Texas rounding out my top 5 because Texas is kind of waiting in the wings, waiting to find out who the SEC, who's going to be in the SEC championship. We have no idea because there's like 8 teams that are all 7-1 or 8-1 or whatever the number is right now. Everybody's got one loss, so somebody's going to be left out. It's just going to be interesting to see who it's going to be.
All right, Jesse.
I mostly agree with Matt. I changed up a little bit in mine. I also put Oregon at number 1. I don't think many people would argue with that choice. I think they look like a pretty complete ball team there. I put Miami at number 2. And the reason for that, because I put Georgia at 3. I don't think Georgia is a number 2 team right now. And I know
almost did something similar, Jesse. Almost.
UGA, our fans are going to come for me, and that's fine. But I think after the performance this past weekend, there's just so many holes that we keep seeing. And fortunately for Georgia fans, they're able to overcome them. But I don't think they're going to continue to be able to do that. I think they've got to fix a lot of things. And to me, it's too much to put them at number 2. So I'm going to put Miami at 2. Georgia's at 3. I throw BYU at 4, and then my 5, I change. I don't think I can put Texas at 5 over an undefeated Indiana. So I'm going Indiana at 5.
Gotcha. And I see what y'all did. You're pretty much projecting the conference, who you think's the top in the big conferences, right? I think I'm going to do more or less of just a true just top 5 and just sort of let things kind of sort themselves out. But I'm going with number 1 Oregon, They're 9-0. They look like the most complete team overall so far. You could argue about who they've played, but they've played some decent teams. Ohio State, I'm going to put at number two simply because their only loss is to that Oregon team, and it was a close game. Georgia, 7-1, despite shaky performances, their only loss is to Alabama. Granted, it might not be the Alabama that we're all thinking, but they showed some real resilience and rallying back in that one. And then obviously the game against Texas, I thought was a good performance as well. I got Texas at number four, 7-1. Their only loss is to Georgia, which might have exposed them a little bit, but they still look like one of the top teams in the country, I think. And then Miami, I'm going to go. They're 9-0. I mean, they've scared themselves pretty much every game, but somehow they're 9-0. So I guess you got to give it to them. So I'm going to put them at number five. So I am curious to see what the committee does, though, because that we always kind of have it in our head what the AP is, and then usually the committee comes in and just does something completely different, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? And then we kind of get a better gauge on how they're going to view things as the season goes along as well. So it's kind of like a mental reset once those first rankings come out.
It's still
Well, and
maddening to
it's
me
going
that
to be a
they're
surprise, I think, as we get to the lower point of those CFP rankings, right? Like I think 9 through 12
Yeah.
is going to be where we're truly all like,
Oh, yeah.
what?
The debate used
I
to
don't
be
think the
4 and
top is going to be
5.
surprising.
Now,
No.
once you get to like 10 through 13, that's going to be a heated discussion this year.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's where the fun begins. Like
Yeah.
top 5, okay, we can probably figure out for the most part who's going to be there. 9 through 12,
Yeah.
I still don't understand why we're doing the silliness with the automatic conference champion
Yeah.
thing. Like, just go with the top 12. Like, why are we making it more complicated than it needs to be? Just go with the top 12.
And then what if the Pac-12 resurrects itself? Are we going to have to go back to top five teams, get a bye? Like what happens?
Uh,
I don't know. Well, it's not fair for the academies for
Yes.
yeah, or Notre Dame for that matter, because they're outside of the. And I know,
that's their
Jesse,
choice.
I see that look.
That's
I
their
get
choice.
it. But it doesn't negate the fact that you're giving the conferences an advantage over non-affiliated.
I also don't like the fact that Army Navy is after Selection Sunday. So
Yeah.
in the off chance that they're both in the hunt, it's just
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
what are
It's
the
a
odds that
scheduling.
both of those teams are still going to be in the hunt when we get to that part of the year?
You never know. You never know. I mean,
Army
I'm not
Army
necessarily even
Navy.
saying this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I still say, I tell you what though, if they do find a way to resurrect the Pac-12, let's say for example they bring basically what is the Mountain West into the Pac-12, if they pull that, then I think they have to reevaluate this automatic bid business. And I think you just go, all right, it's top 12 teams according to the committee, done.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of bloodshed. Jesse's completely right. There's going to be a lot of anguish and gnashing of teeth, as the good book says, about those 10 through 12 spots. 10 through 15 are going to be almost interchangeable, and then you're going to have to look at conference strength. You're going to have to look at head-to-heads. You're going to have to look at points scored. You're going to have to look at all sorts of crazy stuff. But any way you cut this, it's going to be a phenomenal December because we're going to get so many good games from this playoff. I'm really excited. It's going to
The
be
message boards are going to go insane.
Twitter will explode.
Also,
Twitter.
I'm thinking
After
about.
it's announced.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Also, I'm thinking about if some of these conferences are down, like let's say the ACC is weak, and or just pick which conference you don't like. Anyways, and just say that you win your conference, but you're ranked like 10th or 12th or maybe even beyond at that point, but you happen to luck out and win your conference. You know what I mean? You get an automatic bye. Doesn't matter.
Which is
Nice.
outrageous.
No,
Outrageous.
nothing makes
It's
sense.
so
Nothing
nuts.
makes sense
I
anymore.
don't know how the committee sat down in the room and went, all right, we're going to do this. This is going to fly in logic against the logic of everything we've ever thought about football, but it makes sense. We're
Yeah.
going to go with it. It's
It's
silly.
totally bizarre.
Can't wait though.
All right, real quick, because I think we have to discuss this, and I think we have time. So it came to my attention in looking at some of the summaries this week that it appears as if AI is being used to write the AP articles that summarize each game. And let me give you an example. All right, so here's one that I sent to you, to both of you. But this is Georgia, Florida. This is just the opening paragraph for Georgia, Florida. Carson Beck jumped into the stands wearing black eye paint smeared across his face and a wide smile. His three interceptions were a distant memory. All he cared about, what, not was, what, celebrating another victory in the game he cherishes most. Who would write that, first of all?
Somebody that's really not good at writing,
It feels,
apparently.
and then I read the rest of it, and it has a lot of coach quotes and things like that. And I feel like someone just put the stats in. They plugged in the stats. They plugged in some coach quotes into the, whatever their preferred AI generator of choice is, and they just pushed enter, and then out popped this article, and they copied and pasted it in there. It's exactly what it looks like. It's terrible. And
Well,
I
yeah,
just want to know what y'all's thoughts are on possibly using AI to write these summaries.
I mean, I think there's just such a an unrealistic expectation from print journalists to crank out stories so quickly after a game. I mean, I can remember being in the press box after a softball game or whatever, and the game's over, and I'm just kind of waiting and getting my camera gear together, and they're just like, because they have to get something out, and they've got to get it out quickly. They've got to make sure they have everything. There's just unrealistic expectations, I think, on the immediacy of of stories and recaps, but unfortunately that desire also puts the integrity of the journalism on a lower tier, and so if you want it fast, like, you're not going to get it good.
You're going to cut corners. Yeah.
You're going to cut corners, and it's we can tell, like,
Yeah.
you can tell. I'd much rather you post the box score and take an extra hour to write something than for me to read black eye paint the game that he loved. Like, no, that's hogwash.
His three interceptions were a distant memory. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I could tell you as a teacher, and I teach high school kids, so we do a little bit more writing than say an elementary or middle school teacher. But there's a lot of people that if they're just sitting there and they're going, okay, I don't know where to start. How do I write this? Yeah, I'll just put it in Chat GPT and call it a day. I don't want to say that's what happened, but it looks suspiciously like it. So if I'm an editor for whatever journalist was in charge of cranking this out, I'm asking questions. I'm gonna be like, did you write this or did you just chunk this into like Gemini on Google and expect this to work out? Like, it's just, if that's what we're doing, then we've got problems. We really need to reevaluate like
I mean,
how we need to be careful. That's a discussion for another day. But we do need to be careful about what we're feeding these machines as is. They're going to become self-aware. It's going to happen. And the moon
all
landing is fake, by the way. They're
all
putting
all signs.
fluoride in the water. All
Yeah.
kinds of crazy things.
Looking at this article, all signs point to yes for this particular one, at least. I need to go look at the others, but that's just, yeah, that's bad. Anyways, I could spend more time on that, but we've got to move on. So let's go ahead and get into our interview of the week with Payton of the Unwritten Rule. All right. Well, today we are so excited to interview Payton of the Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast that is part of the Believe Network. Payton, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so obviously you're a Mizzou fan. Let's get kind of right into it. So, how did you become a Mizzou fan?
The way I became a fan specifically was I enrolled at Mizzou. That's genuinely the God's honest truth. Before um I went to Mizzou, I had always been a college sports fan, but I had moved around a lot actually as a kid. So I finally settled on Missouri. So when I went to Missouri, that was like, all right, well, I guess I have a college I can hitch my wagon to now. The first game I went to was a Mizzou, West Virginia football game in 2019. That was quarterbacked by Kelly Bryant, and it was I kind of had both of my parents are Big Ten program fans, so I had been used to watching, the Big Ten style of football my whole life. But watching like an SEC program, even though it was just a mediocre one like Mizzou at the time, it kind of opened my eyes a bit, and I kind of just fell in love with Mizzou athletics from there.
Nice. So we talk a lot about traditions on the show, and so what are some traditions, Mizzou traditions that we should be aware of?
The first Mizzou tradition I think I always think of, there's a lot of them just like for athletic events or just on campus. First one I always think of is everyone I think has seen like the Michigan version of Mr. Brightside. I will contend that Missouri's version is better. They always play it between the third and fourth quarter. Um, I'm sure everyone that knows even a little about Mizzou knows that their biggest rival is easily Kansas. That it's just a deep, deep, deep hatred. So right after the chorus hits and the music drops, every single person in the stadium or arena, no matter the athletic event, lets out a pretty massive FKU chant for pretty much the entire chorus until the lyrics come back in. So I don't think Mizzou likes to do it like when it's potentially able to be heard on TV because I think they can get fined pretty heavily for it. They try to put the beat like I went to the Mizzou Auburn game this past year. They put beat Auburn on the screen to try and get people to maybe not scream it. It never works. So that's my favorite one personally. There's so many others though. I mean, every freshman when they get on campus, they walk through the columns, which are their Jesse Hall is the oldest is a big building on campus, and right in front of it are six big stone columns because the original building burned down, and the only thing left are these six huge stone columns, and they just have them sitting in the middle of the quad, which is a pretty area on campus.
Hmm.
So every freshman has to walk through those. And then your senior year, there's a big ceremony where all the seniors walk back through them, like out towards Columbia. That's a fun one. They give you ice cream when you walk through them as a freshman, and they hand you a beer when you walk back out through them, which is they joke it's a free beer, but it's actually the most expensive beer you'll ever have.
Right.
Um, so that's another good one. All the freshmen get to paint. There's a big rock M in the end zone of Faroe Field. Every
Right.
freshman gets to paint a rock and put it in the rock M. So just those are three big ones, I'd say. There's so many more. You're supposed to jump in a fountain on campus. There's like a list of things you're supposed to do as a student, but that could go on for quite a while.
It's funny you were talking about playing the songs. One thing that I noticed quite often was played in a Mizzou game, and I think it's not just Mizzou; it's many stadiums that I've heard it in this year. But it's a song that involves a trumpet, and I cannot
Oh,
place,
geez.
huh?
The Timmy Trumpets song
Okay.
that they play on third down, I
Yes, I was gonna
assume
say
is
it
what you're
happens
referring
on
to.
third down a
Yeah.
lot. Okay.
Yeah, that was they started that a couple years ago. So like it's Edwin Diaz, the Mets closer's like his
Mm.
entrance song. So
Right.
everyone like was going crazy about that a couple years ago. Mizzou jumped on the trend. It's kind of funny though, nobody really enjoys it anymore. Everyone's kind of sick of it. It gets a little old hearing just the constant trumpets. They used to play I Got the Keys because that's another tradition. On third down, you're supposed to get your keys out and jingle them. That one's not as big anymore, I don't think. But
Gotcha.
yeah, the trumpets one is big. They play that every single third down now. And everyone, at least that I know, is kind of tired of it. We want a little more variety on the third down songs.
I could understand that because just in watching games on TV, I hear it every third down and I'm like, my gosh, that is a lot.
Ours
But
are
Yeah.
bells. I mean, it's not that annoying. It's like those
yeah. It's the
they're like
Hell's Bells
yeah,
intro, yeah.
Mm.
it's those
Yeah,
like
no, that's another big one. They don't do that at Mizzou, but I know exactly what you're talking
yeah.
about.
And
Yeah.
you spoke about, in Mr. Brightside, obviously yelling expletives about your rivals. We too do that during Dixieland Delight, and they put the
Which is a song about Tennessee.
I knew that was
We
coming.
yeah, we stayed about several. But I was there specifically the game where they took it away from us.
Oh wow.
They they forbid it to be played at sporting events anymore for like 2 years, and we were begging to have it back. It was my senior year, Iron Bowl at home, and instead of saying, um, we usually say F Auburn and LSU and Tennessee too. Well, instead we just kept yelling F Auburn, and it was so loud, and it was a nighttime broadcast, and I have 1,000% certainty they could hear it. Um, they finally gave it back, but they pump in noise into the stadium that just says beat Auburn
Right.
so that
I think
maybe you
yeah.
can't hear us. It doesn't.
At least the TV, maybe.
That's what they try to do with the Mr. Brightside too, because they started playing it at basketball games a couple of years ago when the Mizzou KU basketball rivalry, the border war,
Hmm.
got revived, but it would last until they'd come back from commercial breaks. So you'd hear a whole lot of students screaming FKU over and over. So they kind of like took it away for a little, but then they just brought it back and did exactly that. Like they try to pump in the beat Auburn, which is what they tried to do that at Mizzou's
There
last
is
homecoming.
not
It
enough
doesn't
noise
work.
that they could pump in to combat over 101,000 people yelling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work well. It
Smelling
doesn't
it.
work with a lot less people than that either.
So one really popular one because people love restaurants and all that good stuff. What are some key go-to spots on game day at Mizzou?
Oh man, the Wendy's on Ninth Street is always a big one. No, I'm kidding. That's
Maybe
that's a
after the
popular
game.
one.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that was always a popular one for me when I was actually in school. It's right across from campus. But I mean, people like if you're talking just places to eat, places like Addison's, Flat Branch in downtown. I've never actually been to Flat Branch because it's always so packed, but everyone loves Flat Branch. I tried a breakfast place at homecoming for the first time, Ernie's, which is downtown. It was fantastic. Um, if you're talking like bars, I mean, everyone loves Harpo's. This one wasn't really for me, but like Willie's was a big one. B12 is a place you can go and get actually pretty decent food, in my opinion, and it's a pretty popular bar as well. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of decent places for food downtown. I would say Addison's is probably my favorite, personally. If I had to pick like a favorite bar, I'd probably pick the Understudy. It's
Hmm.
just not a super poppin' one. Because it can be a lot sometimes, like places like Harpo's and Willie's, but Understudy is kind of a more chilled out one. That's a good one to start at, I would say.
Right.
Is
What
there
about
like a signature drink at the bars? Like, is there a Mizzou kind of drink? We've talked with a couple other fandoms, and they have one that's they're known for at Alabama. It's a yellow hammer. Does Mizzou have anything
I'm
like that?
sure there is. I wish Jack or Kenny, one of the other co-hosts of the pod, were able to be on because they could definitely tell you if there was. I'm not the right one for that one specifically. I'm sure there is. I'm sure Willie's has something,
right?
Harpo's has something like that, but I
What
could
about
not tell you for sure.
what about the tailgate scene? What's that like?
Oh God, there's especially this year I noticed because Mizzou has actually been decent the last couple of years. It's gotten a lot better. They opened the tailgate lots pretty early. It was always kind of a mixed bag while I was in school from 2019 to 2022, because Mizzou was just not very good. They got a lot of 11 a.m. kicks.
Mm.
So it wouldn't be as good as it could have been, but every single night game and everything, afternoon games even, the last couple of years, it's really been amped up. You'll never find a tailgate that I think will kind of look at you funny for joining in and grabbing a beer. I would say it's a pretty good tailgate scene.
Sweet. So obviously you're with the Unwritten Rule podcast. So how did that come about? How did you get involved? What does the name mean, first of all? Because I know a lot of our listeners may be unaware of that.
So the unwritten rule name actually comes from So there's three of us. There's me, Jack Knowlton, Kenny Van Doren. Kenny and I are big baseball fans as well. And as we were starting our podcast, originally it was on KCOU, which is like a student-run uh, radio station in Columbia. It's a great way for everyone to get involved with that. I mean, you didn't even have to be a journalism student like all three of us were to join it, but um, and as we were joining it, I mean, there was a it was COVID baseball, so it was not very good baseball at the time, but one of the big sporting things that was happening at the time, just when there was no news, was Fernando Tatis for the San Diego Padres hit a home run, had a bat flip, and like had caused a brawl, just that type of thing. And it was like about breaking the unwritten rules. So
Hmm.
we just kind of thought the name sounded good. Kenny and I were big baseball fans. The original idea was to kind of have it be like First Take, where Kenny and I would argue a lot, and Jack would be the moderator, but it kind of didn't turn into that. It just came from this one incident in particular with Fernando Tatis bat flipping against the Texas Rangers and causing a big brawl. We were on the radio for 3 years. We wanted to keep doing it for fun, and so we were able to, luckily enough, get on the Believe network. That's where we post all our episodes now, and yeah, we've just been doing it for fun ever since.
Sweet. Yeah, I enjoy baseball as well. So the unwritten rule,
Mhm.
I'm very familiar with those, and you guys, as we were talking before we came on, cover multiple sports, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so Mizzou players, past or present, who's your favorite?
Uh, I'm a really big, I love college football too, but I'm also a very big college basketball guy. My favorite Mizzou athlete personally was Kobe Brown for Mizzou basketball because I was a freshman in 2019. Kobe Brown was also a freshman in 2019, and he stayed through some pretty rough times at Mizzou. He was rumored to enter the portal twice. He never entered the portal. He stayed and actually developed into a first round draft pick. He went from a very seldom used freshman to like this first round draft pick right in front of us. I graduated in 2023. He left Mizzou in 2023. So it's just kind of that kind of attachment kind of made him my favorite Mizzou athlete. Football wise, I would actually say like I wasn't a Mizzou fan back like when he was there, but Jeremy Maclin is so easily the answer for me. Uh, if I had been lucky enough to see him play, I think I'd probably be the biggest Jeremy Maclin fan on the planet. Just a superb. He's basically Luther Burden, if Luther Bird like just Luther Burden cranked to 11. Just a crazy special teams weapon, crazy receiver for probably the best season in modern Mizzou history in 2007. Um, so it was he probably would have been there. My favorite current Mizzou player is definitely still Luther Burden. It's been a bit of a downer year, I'd say, for Mizzou, but just everything he kind of meant recruiting wise, just kind of making it quote unquote cool to go to Mizzou. He stayed home. Yes, Mizzou is, I'm sure, taking care of very good care of him financially. But he did not. There's plenty of other places that would have done that as well. So I definitely would say Luther Burden is my favorite current Mizzou player.
Okay.
Hey, did you happen to see the short, not the short, but the video they did about Burden on College Game Day a couple weeks ago?
I keep forgetting to watch it. I
It's
did
really
see
good.
part of it. I saw like he went back to East St. Louis and
Yeah.
everything.
It does a really good job of showing like how good of a heart that guy's got. And I usually have nothing good to say about Missouri in general, but I will say good things about Luther Burden. So
Yeah,
definitely.
that's actually a big thing. I know he was like it was a big deal for him to like get involved with children's hospitals as like a true freshman. Uh, he's definitely given a lot back to Mizzou. It's not just a transactional, hey, we'll give you a whole ton of NIL and you can come play football here. He's involved with the community more than I think people realize.
Right. So, Peyton, you touched on this earlier, and so I guess we've kind of got our answer, but you may want to elaborate a little bit. But who would you consider to be Mizzou's biggest rival, and can you give us your unfiltered thoughts on them?
Yeah, it's Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas absolutely is the answer. I would say, I mean, it's just a huge, especially for basketball. It is like it's a more of a basketball rivalry than a football rivalry. Just because of the wars those two have had over the years. It's pure hatred. I mean, if you go back and look at photos from back in the day when Mizzou was still in the Big 12 with Kansas, I mean, people would get some outrageous like signs and I mean, it was no holds barred. Um, yeah, no, I'm not a fan of. I wish I had really been around during the Big 12 time to really see just how bad it could get. But even just I was on campus for two of the games. Like I went to Mizzou for two of those basketball games. And you could tell. I mean, it was taken very seriously by everyone involved. I hate the fan base a lot just from Twitter interactions. I actually lived in Kansas City during my time at Mizzou. Like that was just where I went to high school and everything, so I was very used to dealing with Kansas fans. They're entitled, I would say. They have I guess why wouldn't you be if you're a Kansas basketball fan? Um I really got sick of how hyped Kansas football was a year ago. I mean, I know they've been so bad for so long, but God, seeing like just the fawning over Lance Leipold because they won like 8 games or whatever it was. Mizzou won 11 games a year ago and beat Ohio State and didn't get that same level of shine. So that got on my nerves a bit. Um, Me personally, since I have been like a Mizzou fan for the SEC days, my least favorite rival other than Kansas would pretty easily be Arkansas. I cannot fucking stand Arkansas. That is just the only way I can put it. I think they have the dumbest fan base, bar none, in the
That
SEC.
unfiltered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving you the unfiltered thoughts there.
No,
I
I
think it
appreciate
is
that.
easily the dumbest fan base in the SEC. They all think they are a tier one blue blood SEC program. They came from the damn Southwestern Conference. Like they get on my nerves a lot. They're like a third tier SEC program, and they have expectations to be like the top. They're always so dumbfounded when Mizzou beats them in football, despite the fact that they've really never strung together victories against Mizzou. Um, that would be my other answer. It definitely for the fan base as a whole, it's Kansas. For me personally, I might go Arkansas.
Okay. So again, you probably this is one you may have just answered for me, but who is the best fan base that you've interacted with, and then by contrast, who's the worst that you've interacted with?
Yeah, Arkansas is the worst.
The worst.
Very
Okay.
easily the worst. Oklahoma is also down there. I'm not sure if you saw all this in the offseason, but Mizzou got Caden Green, an offensive guard to transfer from Oklahoma to Mizzou. There was a lot of accusations of tampering and whatnot in the
That's
portal,
right.
but
Brady talked about them a little bit. Yeah. Or, him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that there was a lot of contention there. Oklahoma fans actually review bombed Caden Green's dad's business
Oh
uh,
no, no.
because of it. It got real ugly.
I hate that. I hate to see that.
Oh,
And I mean, like there was just a whole ton of smack talk from both sides. And it wound up not really mattering because both the teams are massive letdowns this year. But Oklahoma is probably just to not belabor the point on Arkansas. That's another fan base I don't love. Best fan base. I know it may sound a little bit like sucking up because I'm on your podcast, but I have never had a really bad interaction with a Georgia fan, like online
You haven't
or
met
in
enough.
person. I know I probably haven't met enough, and I
how
know
often
if
have
I
you been
went
to
to a
the state
game,
of Georgia?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
about to say, have you
Just
rolled
to
if
through
I
Georgia lately in the
to
last
give you a
15
little
years?
context, Peyton, they both have lived in the state of Georgia while cheering for another
mm,
team. So I think that is large part
We're
what they've
biased.
experienced.
Our
But
opinion's
yeah.
skewed. I'll tell you that right now.
I've never been to a Georgia game, so I've never had people bark at me or whatever it is Georgia
I
fans
don't do
do.
that.
Experience. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that.
I did live in North Carolina for a lot of my childhood, so I do have like some experience with Georgia fans. Georgia's just big across the South, as is Alabama and Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, I don't really think I've ever had a bad Georgia fan interaction, and that's of like fan bases that I've actually interacted with. Like I don't have anything bad to say about Vanderbilt because I've never run into any of their fans.
That's fair.
Ole Miss fans aren't bad. I don't mind Ole Miss fans. Uh,
You might
most of
be the
them,
first guest on this podcast to say that.
Yeah,
I
Yeah, we've
really
had
have never
everybody's been
had
dogging them.
Yeah, they have.
like I get it. Like Ole Miss fans probably were annoying to a lot of like the blue blood SEC teams because I mean they have a very bombastic head coach in Lane Kiffin and all that. I mean, their fan base is loud, but I don't really have a whole lot of negative to say about them. Uh, yeah, so I'd probably say Georgia of like the really big ones. I don't have a problem with Auburn fans. I don't have a problem with really either. Alabama fans, I've never had a too much a problem with. Unfortunately, Matthew, Tennessee fans, I don't have great experience with
You're on
Tennessee.
Twitter. I would imagine you've run into a couple of my kindred.
I I have that's the exact basis for it actually, but
yeah.
Vol Twitter is the thing, and it is both a lovely thing and it's also an awful thing. And I've been on the receiving end of both ends of that spectrum, so
they're committed,
I get it.
no doubt about it. They're passionate on there,
Nobody can say
100%.
they aren't committed. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, Twitter interactions are always it's an interesting thing. Um, so I do want to get your thoughts, Peyton, on obviously you were talking about Lane Kiffin being a polarizing figure as a head coach at Ole Miss. Eli Drinkwitz also a bit of a polarizing figure as a head coach. What are your thoughts on the job that he's done as head coach at Mizzou?
Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz is it's just so interesting because I think he is a guy that if he were at any other school, I would totally hate. Like I know pretty much everyone else in the SEC hates Eli Drinkwitz, and I'm here to say I totally get it. Like he talks a whole lot of smack. And it's gotten him in trouble plenty of times. And when I'll be honest, like during those 6 and 7 years, and all that, um, it would get a little annoying seeing Eli Drinkwitz like kind of talk all this smack and not have the results to back it up. I mean, I remember the Boston College game from a few years ago,
Oh yeah.
in
Ooh, yeah.
particular, that great state of Massachusetts thing, which was blown a little out of proportion, but still, foot in mouth, they lost the game. It was annoying.
Mhm.
Um, the Tennessee stuff, oh my God. Drinkwitz did a good job of holding his tongue when Tennessee beat them 66 to 24, like when they were trying to like climb back into the CFP race. Drinkwitz held his tongue then. He let loose on them last year. I mean, I'm sure Matthew, you have some thoughts on
I
that.
had I had plenty to say about
Yeah.
standing on business. I had
Did.
lots to say.
Stand on business, and then he runs away from hypo, all that. For the most part, I would say you can't argue, you can't really say you are not a fan of Drinkwitz if you're a Mizzou fan because he's recruited at a level that no coach has even come close to at Missouri. It's not even close. I think the top 3 or 4 classes in Mizzou history are all Drinkwitz's. He's pulled in Luther Burden, Williams Nwaneri was a 5-star. He won Josh Manning, who was a big 4-star, like from the KC area. The recruiting wins for him are unbelievable. It really is something that has never been done at Mizzou. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions about him as like an actual X's and O's coach. I mean, he had to finally give up after 3 years of trying to call plays and be a head coach. He gave up on that, and that worked out. He still is not a good time manager. He's a very bad in-game tactician, I would say. But at the end of the day, he's recruiting at a level no one else ever has at Mizzou. They won a New Year's Six bowl game over a true blue blood, which is something I personally will never forget. But there are those frustrating things. Like he's not, I really just don't think he's a good in-game coach. Um, he mismanages the clock a lot. Uh, his 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 talking can just be it can be frustrating at times. I mean, the whole going into that Texas A&M game this earlier this year, he made it a huge point to say like, "Oh, we know Marcel Reed is starting." Marcel Reed, they listed Wegman as the starter, but that's semantics was the quote he used. And then they went out there, Wegman started, they were not prepared at all. So that was a big frustrating thing for me. I would say Drinkwitz for me personally. I respect the recruiting. I respect the fact that he had that 11-2 season last year, but there are things that frustrate me about Elijah Drinkwitz. But you can't ignore the larger body of work with the recruiting, especially.
Do
Right.
you think, I mean, you mentioned the recruiting. So obviously recruiting is a huge thing. Um, Getting in talent from the transfer portal, big deal. And taking that talent and making sure that they're progressing and they're not regressing. We're seeing that across the SEC. There are programs where we see this caliber talent and they start to regress a little bit. We see programs that should be doing pretty well. You know, someone like a Kentucky, they should be doing well and they're regressing. Do you think Eli Drinkwitz is the coach that is going to not just bring in talent, but is going to get Mizzou over this kind of hump of at least going to an SEC championship? Because I don't think they've been to one since 2014.
13.
Yeah.
14 is the right number.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna
was
say
actually against Alabama.
it was. I was there. It was lovely. But
I'm sure it was.
but it it seems like Mizzou had a big splash in the SEC. They get to the SEC championship their first year in the conference. And then since then, we haven't seen that much consistency from them. We're starting to see them win games, but we're also seeing this season some holes that really need to be addressed. So is Drinkwitz, in your opinion, the coach that's going to get it done and is going to get Mizzou to that next level or back to that level? Or is he just the guy that's going to remain like mediocre consistent?
That's a really good question. Because making the SEC title game now is also so much harder. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back in 13 and 14, Mizzou fans aren't going to want to hear it, but the SEC East was very open for the taking at the time. Georgia was not Georgia. Florida was really not doing well post Urban Meyer. And Mizzou took advantage of that. And then Mizzou, they had a huge the university mismanaged the a lot of protests on
Yep.
campus in 2015 that led to a huge downturn in not just football recruiting, but I mean enrollment at
Yeah.
Mizzou. Just the university suffered heavily for that. Um, and it took a lot of time for them to recover. I mean, Barry Odom and Drew Lock, I mean, they were able to kind of probably buoy Mizzou a lot more than they deserved. But Drinkwitz took over, and I mean, he's been able to recruit, like I mentioned, and like you pointed out, but the talent progressing, that is something, particularly at the QB position, Drinkwitz has not 100% proven he can do. He has not proven, I would say, 100% without a doubt, that he can develop all of this elite talent that he's recruiting, or seemingly elite talent. I mean, Drinkwitz has started, by my count, four quarterbacks in his time at Mizzou. It's Connor Bazelak, Sean Robinson, Tyler Macon started one game against Georgia, and Brady Cook now. Three of those quarterbacks were not even recruited by Drinkwitz to Mizzou. Um, Tyler Macon is the one exception. He was a big time Elite 11 QB, um, at like four-star in 2021. He started one game against Georgia and then never started another game at Mizzou because he couldn't throw the football. He's now at a backup at Alcorn State University. Sam Horn, another huge four-star recruit that they were expecting to take the reins one day. He had Tommy John surgery on his elbow and is out for the year because he was playing baseball at the same time. So, and I mean, Brady Cook, he did take a step forward last year, but again, that's not a QB that Drinkwitz recruited. That was a Barry Odom recruit that Drinkwitz kind of had to start after trying to recruit over him 3 times, trying to get JT Daniels out of the portal, trying to get Jaden Daniels out of the portal, which they thought they had, then that didn't work out, and then trying to get Jerry Bohannon out of the portal. They've tried to, I mean, that's the biggest thing, I think. The biggest question is Drinkwitz came in as like a supposed recruiting ace, which has largely held up, and an offensive guru that in theory should also lead to unlocking the QB position. That has not really happened. Brady Cook was a good quarterback last year, but he's taking a step back this year. So that I don't know, to be honest, to answer your question. I really don't know if he is going to be the guy that kind of gets over the hump and gets them to an SEC title game. Can he take them to the playoff? Absolutely, I think he can. Last year, if it was if they had the 12-team playoff, Mizzou would have hosted again, or no, they wouldn't have. They were number 9, but they would have been in a playoff spot last year. So I do think Drinkwitz is capable of that. I don't know if he's the one that can bring them to an SEC title game, just because I don't know if any coach really can truly come in and do it. It's a lower tier job in the SEC because the SEC is just that good.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I'll leave my last kind of Eli Drinkwitz question for you, and then I'll let Matt jump in. But I personally, and I talked about it last week on the show, when we saw Brady Cook get injured, when we saw him leave and come back and then start a game on an injury that we knew about and then have to leave that game and be benched there. What are your thoughts as a Mizzou fan on the handling of that by not only Eli Drinkwitz, but the rest of the coaching staff to allow a player that is hurt to leave and come back, leave and come back? I personally have an issue with it. I think it's just not worth hurting them that much. I think you have to value them as people and as young people and people that potentially need to carry you the rest of the season. You have to be the adult in that situation and kind of put your foot down, even if they want to come back after an MRI. Like, it's your job to take care of them, and kind of set that standard that they're not just dispensable. So I would love to get your thoughts as a fan on how you felt about that. Obviously, he did an amazing job coming back in, but then in the next game, not so much. So what are your thoughts there?
It would be it'd be one thing I'd think if it was the same injury that kind of pulled him out of the Bama game, because it was his ankle that he screwed up in Auburn, and he came back and won them the game there. Um, and then it's now what they call an upper body injury, because that's one thing with Drinkwitz. He is so needlessly confidential with injuries. They won't even tell if it's like his hand or his wrist. But it is a different injury now, so I don't really blame them too much for that. One thing I will say is that if Mizzou was already out of like their playoff race going into that Alabama game, or if it's not Drew Pine as the backup, I think they probably would have held Brady Cook out. That's another thing with Brady Cook. He is tough as no other player as I've ever seen. If he's not getting an amputation, he will try and play. He's said a million times over and over, he like literally like his dream was to play quarterback for Mizzou. He's only got a few games left because he's out of eligibility this year. So he was going to give it a try no matter what. And I don't think Drinkwitz was going to really stand in his way as long as there was a playoff chance for them, because I mean, I think everyone saw it once Drew Pine came in. Not only were you getting worse at quarterback, the whole team saw that and was like, well, Drew Pine stinks. They're not going to say it, obviously. Drew Pine stinks. This game is over. And everyone kind of rolled over and died in that one. So I don't really think they handled it terribly in that respect. I think if it was a game that ultimately did not matter for Mizzou, like if they were playing UMass or something like they were early in the year, they probably would not have let Brady Cook go out there.
Yeah.
Um, but for Alabama, they let him try, and I don't have too much of a problem with that.
Were you aligned with the choice to bring him back after or in the Auburn game?
I was shocked by that, especially when they said he went to the hospital and everything. I was actually at that game, so I had no clue what was really up with him other than he hurt his ankle on the first drive. I mean, that was another thing where, well, if they lose to Auburn, their season is over. Like they're not going to make the playoffs. So I think as long as they ever had a hope of making the playoff, they were going to let Brady Cook come back in if Brady Cook said he could come back in. And again, there is something to be said about the player kind of is always going to say, "Oh, I can go back in, coach." The coach kind of has to put their foot down, but he made it through the Auburn game okay. Was it a little bit reckless? Maybe. It might have been. Under normal circumstances, I really don't think Drink would have let him go in, but they're so bad at the backup QB position, and they were trying so hard to make the playoff. I don't have too much of a problem with them trying it if Brady Cook was okay with it.
Fair. Fair.
Matt, did
All
you
right,
have any
I'll
questions
let you
for?
jump in. Yeah.
I think we've said everything we need to say. I don't have it.
All right.
Nothing's coming to mind.
Real quick, I got one or two more. What's your prediction for this game against Oklahoma this weekend?
Um, yeah, it's tough because Brady Cook it doesn't look like he's gonna play, but if he plays, I think they'll beat Oklahoma. Because Oklahoma is a mess offensively. I'm not a fan of Jackson Arnold really. Um, and it's going to be a rock fight either way, because Oklahoma has a good defense, but their offense is bad. Kind of the same thing with Mizzou. I think it's going to be low scoring. If it's Drew Pine in there for Mizzou, I think there's a better chance than not that they get shut out. Drew Pine is just that bad. Um, so it kind of depends on the quarterback. If Brady Cook plays, I think they win like 17-13. If Drew Pine is the quarterback out there, I think Oklahoma probably wins it. Probably keeps Mizzou below 10.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we really appreciate you coming on the show, but real quick before we let you go, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me personally on Twitter only. That's my only public account. I am Payton J. Haberman on Twitter. That's my display name. If you want to go find me there. If you want to find the Unwritten Rule, you can find us on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast there. Just Believe Unwritten there. Believe Unwritten also is the Twitter handle. We have a TikTok as well. But definitely Twitter's where we're most active. But yeah, I mean, on YouTube, we're the Unwritten Rule. So if you want to go find us, you can find us over there.
Cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peyton. Thanks for joining us. I really enjoyed learning all things Mizzou from you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for having me
Thanks,
on.
Pete.
Thanks. Have a good one. All right, so that was a great interview, and I think Matt behaved himself fairly well in that one, as well as
There's
can be
there's
expected, I guess.
there's a lot of thoughts up here because anytime you bring up drinking, I'm gonna have thoughts. I'm moving
Yeah.
on.
Well, so we really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed listening to Peyton and learning more about Mizzou. And now let's go ahead and get to the upcoming games and give our predictions.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right, predictions for week. What is this? 11 upcoming? Wow, this is wild.
Okay.
First is Florida, 4-4, 2-3 in the SEC at number 5, Texas, 7-1, 3-1 in the SEC. Noon on ABC. Keep in mind these rankings are AP based right now. In a couple of days, you're going to be seeing completely different rankings. But anyways,
And it's not going to matter until the last week.
yeah, right, exactly.
Wait, what? Hold on. What'd you say, Jesse?
Said it's not going to matter until the last
Oh
week.
no, it won't
Right.
matter. But it gives them something to talk about for 2 hours on
Exactly.
the
Exactly. So it sounds like Aiden Warner is likely to start in this one with Lagway's injury. I think Texas, like Georgia against Florida, needs to be careful. I think Florida is strong in the trenches, and that showed in the game against Georgia. Whether it be a backup quarterback or a not 100% DJ Lagway, probably more towards the Warner starting. I think that's too much to overcome for Florida. I think it's just a lot to ask of them, especially at Texas. I'm going Texas here, 35-13. Jesse?
Yeah, I agree. I think Florida showed some grit, obviously, in that UGA game, but unfortunately, with those injuries at quarterback, I'm just not sure that we're going to see that same grittiness. We might see a flash of it, but I don't think it's going to hold up for 4 quarters. So I'm going to pick the Longhorns in this one, 31-17.
All right, Matt.
I initially was going to say that this was going to be a close game, but then my brain went, "Oh, Fortson, don't forget, DJ Lagway's probably not playing." So, like y'all both said, if Lagway's playing, I think this is a little bit closer. But again, I don't like Florida's chances here. So I'm going to go with Texas, and Matthew McConaughey is going to have a good day. I'm going to say Texas 38-14. We need to get Matthew McConaughey on the show.
I need to send a request. I need to get on that.
I'll send
Go
him
for
a
it.
DM. Y'all go
Let's do
ahead.
it. Do it.
Y'all, I would be so unwell.
Oh man. All right. Next is number 2, Georgia, 7-1, 5-1 in the SEC. At number 16, Ole Miss, 7-2, 3-2 in the SEC, 3:30 on ABC. As I alluded to earlier, if Georgia doesn't get pressure on Jackson Dart, he will have a career day because our secondary just can't defend much. Beck has to make better decisions. If it's not there, don't force it. It is okay to throw it away sometimes. It is possible. So Kirk Herbstreit had a good point during the broadcast. It seems like Georgia has to have a challenge set before them in order to play well. It's like we see this a lot with teams that have won championships or have even done well, not even to the championship level. Like they get used to winning and then they don't play to the level that they should. Case in point, this year, obviously we've seen them struggle a lot, but then when they were underdogs against Texas, they came out, going crazy, just, playing really well. That was literally the best that they've looked overall as a team this season. In that vein, and it's yet another road challenge, I'm going to say they rise to the occasion and get that pressure on Dart that's going to be needed. I'm going to go Georgia in this one, 28-21. Jesse?
Yeah, this is one where if Ole Miss is firing on all cylinders, and I think Dart may very well be, you already mentioned it. I don't know that Georgia's secondary is going to be able to handle that. Plus, with Carson Beck showing a little bit of regression and some bad decision making, and they're playing in Oxford, I'm going to call the upset here. I like Ole Miss in this one. I think Ole Miss is going to continue to watch film this week and see the holes in UGA and capitalize on them. And I don't think that Georgia is going to see Ole Miss as a challenge like they did with Texas. And so I think that Georgia's going to roll in. I don't know if Carson Beck makes those meetings this week with his coaching staff that desperately need to happen. And I think if Ole Miss is firing offense and defense and they put together 4 full quarters, I'm picking Ole Miss in a close one, 35-31.
Yeah, I mean, I hate it, but that's completely reasonable. Matt, what do you got?
Jesse, I'm going to be a little selfish here and hope that you're wrong because if Georgia loses the week before Tennessee, I don't like chances when Tennessee play UGA at home. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster for me. For me personally, that would be bad. But I think I'm going to give. I've said in the past that Kirby has the ability to make adjustments, and Kirby has the ability to get people to play like they're supposed to. I think Kirby's going to be able to get them up for this particular game. So I think UGA wins. I think it's tight, but I think UGA is going to find a way to win this thing 27-24.
All right.
Regardless, the group chat between like Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin, and Nick Saban will be like popping off this week.
That it will.
Nick's too busy being distracted by Pat McAfee and trying to figure out what breakfast food they're bringing him.
Exactly. South Carolina 5-3, 3-3 in the SEC at number 24 Vanderbilt 6-3, 3-2 in the SEC, 4-15 on the SEC Network. If I'm basing this off last week, Carolina looks way better as far as the eye test goes, but I think it might be a bit of a letdown game for South Carolina here. Huge win last week, obviously, for them. But Vandy's got that vibe going this year, especially at home, like the vibe of let's lull you to sleep with construction and kind of a comparatively subdued environment, and then we're just going to beat you. So Pavia, I think, has another good game, and Carolina has a bit of a sloppy game. I'm going Vandy in a close one here, 24-21. Jesse?
I agree that it's probably going to be a close one, but I think because this is the game that will get Carolina bowl eligible. Again, later on in the schedule, they could still become bowl eligible, but I think they're riding a high. They
Do
have
they get T-shirts?
probably knowing Shane Beamer, likely. I think they're going to see this as let's continue this success. Let's get bowl eligible. And I think, and obviously, I think he's an amazing athlete, and we've seen it time and time again. Diego Pavia is incredible, but he has been known to throw a couple interceptions. So I think that might rear its head here. Vanderbilt has already become bowl eligible now, so a little bit of that pressure might be taken off of them. And I think we're finally, as we talked about at nauseum, we're seeing Sellers, we're seeing Rocket Sanders finally hitting their stride. I'm going to pick Carolina in this one. I'm going to go Gamecocks 31-24.
All right. Matt, what you got?
Jesse's all about the upsets this week.
I'm just being an agent of chaos because nothing in football makes sense anymore.
That's completely fair, and it's completely understandable. I think Carolina's coming off a pretty big high right now. Hangover games are a thing in the SEC. They always have been. They will continue to be so. And Vandy has been sneaky good. I think Vanderbilt's going to find a way to win this thing, and I like their chances here. I say 28-20 Vanderbilt.
All right. Next is Mississippi State, 2-7, 0-5 in the SEC at number 7, Tennessee, 7-1, 4-1 in the SEC, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Look, I'm not going to pretend like Mississippi State's going to win or even make this one close, but I do think this one might be kind of closer, especially since Tennessee is expected to win. And maybe that sense of urgency isn't there. Still, Mississippi State, despite the bright spots from Van Buren, just doesn't have the talent to hang. I'm going Tennessee in this one, 35-21. Jesse?
I feel bad for the Bulldogs. I do not think that they're going to get an SEC win. They're playing against Tennessee, who's a top 10 team. They're playing at night in Neyland. It's not going to be that fun. But I'm going to pick the Volunteers in this one, 38-10. Try to leave them with some dignity, guys.
Matt?
By the way, I just realized this is another night game in Neyland. I feel like that's all we play for the last month and a half. It's kind of crazy. There's been people that have been on Vol Twitter that complained about that too. They're like, I don't want to stay up so late for a game. I'm like, why are you complaining? Shut up.
People who will complain about literally anything.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. Well, they were ready. Listen, they were ready to crucify our kicker.
Gosh.
And I went to bat. I was like, you can't boo the man. He's a kicker. Just leave him alone. Anyway, I digress. I like Tennessee's chances here. I think there's going to be a little bit of looking ahead to UGA. So I think this is going to be another case of nothing really happens in the first half. And I think that we finally kind of get a couple scores in the second half. I think Tennessee pulls away. So I'm going to say 28-10 UT. I'm hoping the UGA game is where we finally start getting two full halves together. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
All right, let's go to this has got to be our game of the week, right? I mean, because this is
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is
top 15 matchup between
top
those
15.
two teams.
I know Georgia Ole Miss is a big one, but I think this one might be more. It's like it's almost like an elimination game of sorts with Alabama LSU because the team that loses will have 3 losses. Not saying they'll be out, but it's a much more of a challenge.
It doesn't look good.
Yeah. So let's so number 11 Alabama 6-2, 3-2 in the SEC at number 14 LSU 6-2, 3-1 in the SEC. That's 7:30 on ABC. I think both of these teams have a lot of question marks right now. Obviously, they've tried to work on these during the bye week. I think both quarterbacks, the goal is simple, right? Be smart with the football. For me, though, so this is projected pretty much down the middle. And for these coin flip games, I typically go with the home team, especially one that's known for having the home field advantage that LSU does. So And we talked with Mike of the Pot of Gold podcast about Death Valley at night, and it is a thing. I'm going LSU here in a close one, 27-24. Jesse, what do you got?
I don't know. I keep changing it. I'm getting so paranoid. I've changed it so many times. I just I don't like it. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. I initially had LSU because I'm like, yeah, it's a night game in Death Valley. I don't like this. But then I'm also like, this could very well be the game that decides whether or not Alabama goes to the playoff. I think we've seen holes in both teams. Absolutely. We've seen areas that need to be improved. And I do not like playing them coming off of a bye week. I really don't. Now I'm almost convincing myself to go back the other way. This is terrible. Okay. I truly don't know. I could pick either one at this point. I'm gonna pick Bama just because yes, I'm a homer, but I'm hoping that like me manifesting this will
Just willing it to happen.
it'll come to fruition. This could literally go either way. I think it's gonna be really close. I think there's gonna be a lot of penalties. I think it's gonna be really sloppy on both sides for everybody involved. But I'm gonna pick the Tide 24-21. I don't know.
All right, it's locked in. Matt, what do you got?
This is the very definition of a coin toss because I don't feel like either team. None of us feel comfortable about these picks. None of us do.
No.
I am going to go with the Tide here. Oof. I think they're going to find a way to win this thing. I think it's probably going to come down to a late fourth quarter turnover that kind of gives them the edge. I like Bama here, 28-24.
Gonna be like
All right.
1 minute explosive play, Milrow to Williams. And it's just I'm not gonna understand how Williams makes the catch, but it's gonna be an explosive play. And that's gonna be what takes us from like 21 points tied to beating them. I don't know.
Hey, I mean, this game between these two always seems to pay off in the end in terms of excitement.
I already
So,
want to play. I don't know.
by the way, did y'all know that next year Ryan Williams will be 18 years old?
No, dude. God.
All right, let's go to Oklahoma at 5-4, 1-4 in the SEC. At Missouri, 6-2, 2-2 in the SEC. 7:45 on the SEC Network. These are two teams that have really struggled with their identities this year. Oklahoma has just been on the short end of the stick, rather, with so many of their receivers out with injury. I kind of put these teams on a similar level, but just with the adversity that Oklahoma has faced, I have to give Mizzou the edge in this one. So I'm going to go Missouri, MIZ 24-17. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that Oklahoma is going to get their second SEC win here. I think there have been those that have exposed Missouri, but hello Tide. But I think that they're gonna roll over the Sooners here. So I'm gonna pick Mizzou in this one, 35-14.
All right, Matt.
I can't put my faith in Missouri. I just can't. I really can't. I just feel like everything's a gimmick. Everything's a marketing strategy. You have the nerdiest guy on the planet that's the head coach. I'm going to pick Missouri. I want Oklahoma winning this game. In fact, if Oklahoma,
can you say MIZ?
No, I'm not saying. If don't do that, West. If Oklahoma had anything resembling a quarterback and a wide receiver core, then I would like Oklahoma's chances here. I feel like Missouri's been a paper tiger since week 1, and they just got exposed for it. But long story short, I'm picking Missouri here. I'm saying 21-14.
I see what you did there, Tiger. Paper tiger.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, the picks are locked in for the upcoming week. Should be an exciting weekend. So, let's get out of here.
You don't want to change your LSU Bama pick one more time?
I might honestly. Before Saturday, it might change.
You got kickoff on Saturday.
It's true.
To change it.
It's true.
I'm already unwell.
All right. Well, it'll be an exciting week to be sure. So, if you would like to contact us, please email us at pigskinsandpageantry@gmail.com. Don't forget, we are at Pigskins and Pageantry on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at PPSCC Podcast on X. And then don't forget, we're available for download on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, and most podcasting apps for iPhone, Android, and other operating systems. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and review. 5 stars. We would love that. Increase our visibility and increase our chances of having conversations with wonderful people like yourselves. So, yeah, like I said, exciting weekends coming up. I'm more than nervous. So until next time, this is Wes. Go Dogs.
All right, y'all, just get your Tums because I feel like there's going to be a lot of heartburn come Saturday. Roll Tide.
Let's put sports aside. Tuesday is a very important day because you have an opportunity to practice your civic duty. So please do so. Go vote. Regardless of who you vote for, please go vote. That being said, go Vol.